So my name is Katherine Rowe. I recently graduated Curtin University last year. I did a double major in professional writing, publishing and creative writing, and I've just started working at the Department of Training and Workforce Development in their graduate program. But I'm here talking to you today about the ePortfolio, or the iPortfolio, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. It was a tool that we used as part of our third year unit, Writing for Professional Context, and it was a tool that I actually found very useful out of academic context when I started to apply for professional or private or public positions. I've just updated my About Me section to try to sort of update where I am actually in the workforce. I'm not sure whether or not there's the capacity now to link this publicly. Not yet. It's still all privately.
You can. They're working on being able to download it to a public ePortfolio. Yeah.
So I think once it's finally at a public level, it'll actually be a tool that I will come back through and update, because I think it's fantastic in terms of adding that little bit extra to your resume when you're one of 100 applicants. If they want to look at your work, they have the opportunity to do so, the interview panel. So on my About Me section here, I've kept my original capacity statement that I actually developed in third year, and I think that was a really beneficial exercise, because I think it's something that probably I wish personally that I had done in second year, because by highlighting your strengths and weaknesses, you actually get a sense of where you want to go, what kind of sort of positions in the professional workforce that you'd be interested in. And that was something that until my third year, which was very late off the mark, that I hadn't particularly considered. So I think using this tool to sort of flesh out those kind of ideas at an earlier stage is probably good, because not only can it give you some direction, an endpoint, it'll help you choose electives, it'll help you choose whether or not you're actually on the correct academic path. It will perhaps toss up some other ideas, perhaps you'd want to change majors or go on to study something else. I think the earlier you think about these things is the better, because ultimately you'll be able to sort of direct yourself as opposed to just sort of fall into whatever you end up in at the end of your degree. So at the moment my goals have changed significantly from my academic goals, and that's something that's happened in the space of a few months. So I think that is something, coming back to the iPortfolio and regularly updating it, you'll actually be able to sort of track your progression, not only as a student, but once you're out in the workforce, track your career and track how your goals actually shift as you're exposed to new experiences and things like that. I might just go through, I'll get you to flick to, I can't remember what's in there now. My showcases, I think, is probably the most relevant. Maybe the department and local government and communities, that one just there. That's all right. That's just me showing off how fabulous I am.
So you've got some examples of your work there?
Yeah, I think apart from, obviously, as I've already mentioned, talking about being able to sort of go through and figure out where your skills and weaknesses lie, the other amazing thing about the iPortfolio is that it stores as an electronic storage facility for work that you can basically use to showcase, as I said, if you include it in application letters. I found it particularly good because when I was at Department of Local Government and Communities on my placement, I was regularly given tasks, but unless I had written them down, or in this case use the iPortfolio to actually regularly update the kind of work that I was doing, obviously considering confidentiality and department values and clearing all this work with my line manager at the time, it actually helped me remember what I had done, because I mean, it goes very, very quickly when you're actually at your placement, and then once you're gone, you can sort of think back and go, oh, I remember I did something to do with the website, but I don't necessarily remember exactly what that is. Whereas if you take snapshots, or if you get drafts with permission that you can upload, you can very easily go back in there when you're required to apply for an interview. If, say, you're wanting to meet certain criteria, say you're going for a communications role and one of the criteria was writing for the online or something along those lines, you could jump on here and say, oh, wait a second, I did do some online content, I did something to do with the seniors card, Bendigo Bank Festival. So that's a relevant example that I can include in my resume. So if I was to update it now, I would include examples from my current position, and I would also probably look back at what I have here and consider what is relevant. I've also got a section under my showcases which has some of my work that I did in university. You can see here I've got the media release is probably a good one. Yeah, so even academic examples are just as viable as actual work experience examples. And when I went for my position that I'm in now, I actually use predominantly academic examples, and being able to jump on here, pull it off very, very quickly, not have to sort of file through my sort of stacked desk of mess that I somehow cohabited in for 3 years of my life when I did my degree, was fantastic. So I had it all set out very, very clearly. I could just jump in, pull it off, and then basically go through, remind myself exactly what the content of this media release was, and then sort of apply that to criteria in a job interview. I think something else that would be really good for the ePortfolio, and something that I never had the opportunity to do, but I did discuss with my tutors, was actually going through and developing basically a list of criteria, even if they're just really general criteria, things like written and oral communication skills, or research and analytical skills, or capacity to work in a team. Just developing really sort of set criteria and having them perhaps listed under my ratings, which was a tab that I didn't find that I personally used. I think maybe if you had a bigger network, it would be something that would be quite relevant. But yeah, using that instead to list criteria, and then being able to look at your examples of your academic work and say, okay, yes, in this I was involved in teamwork, or in this particular role I had to liaise with people from the community, or community representative, which is liaising with external stakeholders. Or you could basically go through and you could look at your examples and you could flag exactly what kind of criteria it ticks off, and then, you know, when it comes to uploading, you're actually asked if you want to tag certain skill sets in each of the documents, and that was a feature that I never used. But in that respect, if you were uploading documents and you had, I don't know, a dozen documents on there, and you just wanted to quickly navigate to what was relevant, to what you thought you would actually need for an upcoming interview or for an application, you could just click on that and it would just dump you straight into where you need to go, and you'll just be able to have that information right there at your fingertips. So definitely a fantastic resource. Probably my career, I think, or is it my course? Oh yeah, my career. And yeah, department training, have I updated that one? Oh, maybe that's not the best example. This is me starting to go through and update it now. I have a more developed document that I need to work on and actually upload onto my ePortfolio. But that same kind of thing that I was talking about before, using the tool to remind yourself and to update as you go along, to remind yourself what you've actually accomplished. Because, as I said, it's so easy in the space of a 3-year degree, or if you're in a work placement for a few months or a few weeks, to forget what you've actually done and what you've achieved, and then you look back on it and you haven't got that experience. I mean, you have the experience that's made you stronger and wiser and more confident, but you don't actually have relevant examples that you can use to forge your career. Is there anything else you'd like me to talk about specifically?
Yes, Katherine, that's really interesting. Can you talk a bit about things that you included perhaps from your creative writing studies or your other interests or hobbies?
Yeah, sure. I've actually got under my course, I think I've got a section on creative writing. Yeah, if you just click on that. Yeah, so here I've gone through and actually started to think very critically about what the creative writing major of my degree actually offered. And I've been talking predominantly about professional writing and publishing, but I still argue today that creative writing was just as valuable for me in terms of professional writing and publishing, particularly for the teamwork aspect of creative writing. You're often working in groups, you're bouncing ideas off each other, you're giving feedback on other people. It's about sort of being very politically correct, not offensive. You're trying to sort of encourage people at the same time, steer them in a certain direction. And I really appreciate that kind of feedback. It made me a better writer. It exposed me to a huge range of writing, which is always a good thing, particularly if you go off into the workplace and you're required to edit other people's work. I haven't actually included anything quite personal, like hobbies and interests, but I think that that would be incredibly viable as well if you're doing advocacy work, or even things like volunteering your time, or if you're involved in, I think even things like sport and stuff like that, it actually kind of helps. It kind of rounds you out more as a person. It gives you sort of a three-dimensional, makes you more humane than, you know, just a bit of paper and a qualification. So that is something that perhaps I could look at doing. Probably I didn't include it because there isn't a whole lot going on in my personal life. I haven't really, I mean, you know, beyond the usual socialising, but I'm not sure that's entirely relevant to someone who was looking at it from a professional perspective. So I suppose it depends on what you want your ePortfolio to portray you as. Obviously mine is very much geared towards the public sector, because that's where I'm working at the moment. It's where I'd like to continue to work. So, and when I actually did my ePortfolio originally, I was gearing it to showcase the skills for that sector. So if you were a creative writer and you wanted to get into book publishing, you could include, you know, an entirely different range of things on your ePortfolio to showcase who you are and what you want. If you're a musician, you could include tracks of music, or if you're I suppose if you're a film editor, or you are something to do with graphic design, you can include all that in your ePortfolio. It's very, very easy to use. Apart from the colours and things which obviously set, you can go through and you can set whatever categories you would like. It has a pretty substantial storage space, which is also very good. So you don't feel as though you're pinholed into doing a certain thing in a certain way. You can definitely go through and cater it for you, and use it as a tool not only for your own personal growth, but also for your professional growth, and to sort of update it as you go along, and really take advantage of its capacity to store all your work so you don't lose it, which would be a definite shame.
Catherine, can you talk a little bit finally about the process of developing it? You had to do it as part of an assessment for a unit you were doing, but you obviously went beyond the required minimum for the assessment. You actually added a lot of other material. Can you talk about the value, or what you found useful about that specifically? Did it make you think about anything particular, or?
Definitely. I suppose it's difficult when you undertake so many projects when you're doing your degree. It's hard to figure out what's relevant and what's not. I mean, it's all relevant in terms of your education, but what you're proud of personally, what you really enjoyed. I found that all the examples that I've included are things that I personally very much enjoyed in university, and it's something that, I mean, as a professional writer and a creative writer, those are the sort of things that I had highlighted as a really good example of my skill set. So
when you were developing it, did you already know which things you were going to put up, or was the process of developing it made you recognise what work you were proud of?
Definitely the latter. Yeah, I think it's easy to sort of lose track of what you're proud of, and it's in a way, I think we're all quite modest. We don't want to, you know, toot our own horn. We don't want to tell people how fantastic we are. But when it comes to leaving university and going into the workplace, you need to become more comfortable with that concept. And I think that developing this ePortfolio, going through the processing of picking out what was relevant, what I was actually proud of, that I would, you know, wouldn't be, not ashamed, but I wouldn't bat an eyelid at showing someone else, you know, a piece of my work, because, you know, I was quite proud of it, and I had, you know, put a lot of research and effort into it. Going through that process, I've totally lost my train of thought.
So do you think that the actual process of developing an ePortfolio helped you become more sort of job ready, or do you think that it was just a result of your thinking about that as part of your placement in your other study?
I think it was a combination of things. I think it was primarily to do with the structure of the course that we did, because it not only gave us this assessment, I was doing a work placement at the time with the Department of Local Government and Community, so I was getting exposed to a lot of material, sort of understanding what I would be, you know, asked to do in a work setting. But also that other aspect when we did tutorial sessions, where we are able to sit down and start to work on things like capacity statements, and start to work on networking, start to work on basic interview skills, being able to talk about yourself. So it was really part of a sort of, I'd say sort of a three-way triangle of development. And prior to doing the professional context unit and my work placement, I was really struggling in terms of finding a little bit of confidence. And I think that having those discussions in a sort of a small group environment and realising that everyone else was in the same boat, and then starting to develop this sort of gave me, like I said, the necessary confidence, kind of an idea of what I had to offer, because I think it's very easy coming out of a degree to feel as though you don't have any skills. When you actually start uploading work, you can say, hey, I can write, I can research, because here are some examples of that. So it does help with building your confidence. But yeah, I really think that the ePortfolio is a tool that is best used as long as you're sort of in that kind of environment that sort of, you've got that workshopping was really, really important for me. I think if I had not had that element and I just had the ePortfolio, I don't know whether I would have been as inclined. I think those workshopping, the speakers, the tutors that we had, the other students, their sort of feedback, and yeah, like I said, knowing that they were in the same boat really sort of gave me a little bit of confidence to go ahead and starting to work on this. And that helped me later on, because I'd already started thinking about, along the correct lines as to how I was actually going to get a job. And that was massive in terms of giving me an advantage when I started to apply earlier for positions. So.
And finally, do you think the student blog was an important part or just a minor part of adding to that triangle of activities?
I'd say definitely again, because we only obviously had limited opportunities to catch up with other students. We only had 2 meetings, I think, or 3 in the semester. And the running blog, it was good. I think we offered each other a lot of support even in sort of a virtual realm. We also helped each other with technical issues that we encountered with ePortfolio. I was using it a lot, so I was able to help other people who are having difficulties. But yeah, it was more sort of having that support network. So if you'd had a bad experience or you were feeling overwhelmed, and you could jump online and type a blog up about it, and 2 seconds later someone would come back saying, it's all good, I had a similar experience, and this happened to me, and you've just got to stick it out, or you're doing the right thing. Just having that little sort of extra bit of reassurance from people who are in a similar position to you was fantastic, and a very, very valuable experience. So.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much, Katherine. We'll stop there.